Hey guys, what is going on? So I wanted to talk about a recent body scan that I did here and how it applies to the law of specificity. And if you are a more advanced athlete or you're a hard gainer or you're specifically struggling with one area, I think this is super important and nobody really talks about this. So I wanted to just kind of throw this out here. So I'm going to go ahead and record my screen and just kind of show examples from my scan. So if you look at my overall weight, it's going to be 13 pounds lighter than it was back in my May 25th scan. Obviously, this is going to affect some things, but I would guess that if I were to gain another 13 pounds, it would be along the same lines of maybe 2/3 of it being fat as it was last time, and then 1/3 being lean mass. But it's hard to know exactly, but I think if you look at other trends here, they're very obvious. So my shoulders, for example, are just about the same size, maybe a little bit of a fluctuation, but I have not been training my shoulders recently because they tend to dominate my upper body workouts. So I think it's safe to assume that my shoulders, if they were being trained recently, would be at least the same size, if not bigger. That seems consistent with the strength gains that I've seen since May 25th. And if you look at my arms, they look to be roughly the same. And if I were to gain another 13 pounds, probably would be a little bit higher. And I think that's consistent with probably some tricep strength, maybe even bicep strength and size that I've gained over the last few months. And then the big one that I want to look at here is chest. It is actually higher considering I'm 13 pounds less. So I think it's safe to say that I've added some chest size there as well. Waist and stomach, it's kind of hard to tell how much fat would contribute to those differences in inches. But I would say that I've probably been about the same in those areas, or they would achieve the same level had I got up another 13 pounds. Now, my legs seem to be, half an inch in certain areas and up to a full inch in other areas, which I think indicates that I've seen a little bit of decrease in leg size, and that would be consistent with my training, considering I haven't squatted really since May, and I haven't really deadlifted consistently for a few months, just as I haven't really done a lot of shoulder training. And it's mostly been chest work and tricep work and, back and biceps as well, but not a lot of, other stuff that I decreased in. So if you look at that trend, it's pretty obvious to see that I've gained size in my upper body and gotten a little bit smaller in my lower body. And I think that's consistent with my training. There's obvious strength differences from the time when I was even my heaviest at 241 and where I'm at now, even though I'm 13 pounds lighter. So I think it's safe to say that I have gained muscle in those areas, especially if you look at the measurements. And I think that's super important to talk about because I basically neglected leg training since this time. And I think that's allowed me to make pretty substantial size and strength gains while still not having to consume a super excessive amount of calories. This is the law of specificity, saying that if you focus on a certain muscle group and allocate all your resources, time, energy, food, etc. into them, then you will see better results. And I think for somebody like me, who's pretty high in the FFMI scale, I think my natural limit is approaching more quickly than it is for other people, and therefore I need to focus on specific groups to gain muscle in that way. So if you look at maybe if I've gained a few pounds this year in my upper body, that's a pretty crazy amount of gain. Considering most people gain most of their muscle in their lower body, 3 pounds of my upper body in about 6 months is pretty substantial if that's kind of a rough estimate that I give myself, especially considering how close I am to my natural limit. And if I were to go ahead and try and improve my leg size and strength by starting again, I think you would see that my lean mass would go substantially higher than it's ever been. And to achieve gains like that in my upper body, I think is purely because I've been focusing on those lagging parts, or those parts that maybe I was super focused on, whether they were lagging or not. So I think that's super important to think about. And if you kind of neglect a certain part of your training, a lot of people are going to say, oh, if you skip leg day, that's really bad. But if you were like me and my legs were already pretty developed, my squat was my most advanced lift. If I neglected legs and focused on a relatively lagging body part or group of muscles, I think that has allowed me to have the gains that I have. And I think it's super important, and nobody talks about that, of just kind of allowing yourself to take a backseat in certain parts of your body so that you can focus on other parts. So that's all I wanted to say. I think people are afraid to do this, but it is something that I think is a very strategic move for the long term. And Just want to throw that out there. That's all I got to say about it. I will keep you updated, and I will talk to you soon.